Welcome to the Beer Connoisseur, Beer Buyers Club, and Gourmet Brewing's new live stream and podcast. This new collaboration with Tavour will provide amazing opportunities to hear from great brewers, share the secrets of their awesome beers. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I'm a certified Cicerone, certified BJCP beer and mead judge working on advanced ranks. Looks like we got some good folks there in the chat, and I appreciate everybody that has joined us. Please type in the chat kind of where you're from. We'd love to know where you're from and what you are drinking tonight. For those of you unfamiliar with Gourmet Brewing, we provide content related to brewing and enjoying some of the very best beverages. If you don't mind, please click the green follow button. It's up in the upper, I think, right-hand corner. Anyway, it's up there at the top. And click on that. That really helps me attract more speakers, because the higher that number is, the more impressed they are and the more apt they are to join us. Beer Connoisseur is one of the highest read and most trusted sources of beer knowledge worldwide, with over 8 million readers. Their beer club provides an opportunity to buy highly rated and sought after beers through Tavour, spelled Tavour. The Tavour app is available in both Apple and Android version and allows members to purchase these unique beers, which are delivered straight to your home. Hopefully your state is one of the 24 that Tavour can ship to. I want to welcome our newest sponsor, and that's Precision Fermentation. They're the creator of Brew Monitor, the industry's first comprehensive real-time fermentation monitoring system. Brew Monitor live streams dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, and conductivity from existing fermentation tanks to any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Continuous sampling, 24/7 remote tracking, and deep data analysis can greatly improve operational efficiency, as well as help prevent problems and ensure batch-to-batch consistency. For more information about Brew Monitor and to start a free 30-day trial, visit precisionfermentation.com. T as in Tom, B as in boy, C as in cat. Also, I want to quickly remind you, if the webinar is not playing correctly, just refreshing your browser window does amazing things. And actually clicking the resolution in the bottom corner of the screen can make a big difference also. You can just reduce the resolution and see if that doesn't improve things. We also have an Ask the Question button, and that's in the bottom center of the screen. It'd be great if you would click on that. That way you can ask questions to the brewers. We're going to do that in the last part of the second segment. So, of each segment, excuse me. So, just click on that. The polls in the chat screen. Don't put questions in the chat. We'd love to get your idea on the polls. I just wanted to introduce who all we're having today. We've got Kenny Allen of True Respite. He'll be speaking actually first. Then we've got Kolby Wood of White Elm Brewery. Then we will have Brian Nelson of Hardywood Brewery. And then we will follow up at the very end with Mark Osborne with Adroit Theory. And if you're wondering where the order came from, it actually is highest to or lowest to highest alcohol. So what we will hear from each brewer is we're going to hear a little bit about the brewery. We're going to discuss their beers, and then they'll answer your questions. So, and I'll also talk a little bit about what is next. And I think we're going to start with Kenny Allen of True Respite Brewery in Rockwell, Maryland. For over 20 years of brewing experience, including time at Old Dominion, Old Ox, Mustang Sally, prior to joining Respite as a co-owner and brewmaster. Over 1/2 dozen GABF gold medals. So Kenny, could you share us a few quick highlights about True Respite?
Located just outside of Washington, D.C. It's about 20 minutes outside the district. So we've been around for coming a little over 2 years now. Started the place with Brendan and Bailey O'Leary. So it's been a nice Three Musketeers kind of thing coming at this brewery. Brendan does an awful lot with distributors and sales. Bailey does a lot with our tap room, and she keeps Brendan and I in check with money. So she does a lot of the accounting. So she's invaluable. And then I'm in the production area, and I'm very lucky. I have a great staff of people I get to work with. I got Brian McGlynn, that is my assistant brewer. And then I also have Sharon Bachman, who has recently started, she's taken over the canning line, and man, is she doing a bang up job. So I'm very lucky to have both of those people in the production area with me. We started in 2017. It's nice because the True Respite thing, when we started coming up with this idea, Brendan and Bailey already had this idea by the time they found me. We met on the internet. So they already had the True Respite idea. But when they started sharing the idea with me, it really resonated with me quickly. And it was like everybody is like running around, and it's never more true in the times we're living in right now. Everybody just needs to like check out every so often and find their true respite and go just relax and recharge. Everybody's under a lot of stress. We're all learning new systems right now. And we just want people to take us along with wherever they're going and have our beer be part of their true respite. And that's why when you look at a lot of our labels, they always, we did one that has canoes and kayaks on it. I'm big into that. Brendan and Bailey both are into skiing. One of our labels had that. We've done a lot of Inner Circle beers. So we have an Inner Circle series that I really enjoy too. And those are mostly kind of very hoppy New England IPAs. And we name those after people in our inner circle that have really stood beside us when we've been trying to launch this thing and helped out a lot. We just did one, I don't know, I kind of got an inner circle. They told me to come up with one, and I got a little goofy, but I was like, oh yeah, I want to do my dog. I have a dog that I adopted from the animal shelter. And I was like, and all of a sudden I got to talking to the other people there, and everybody was like, oh yeah, I adopted a dog too. So we're putting one out with everybody's dog that we adopted from an animal shelter on there. So yeah, we all work really hard and we have where we're trying to get to, but we also just want to remember that there's a lot of people around us supporting us, and it's not me, Brendan and Bailey. It's a large number of people that are making this happen, and we really appreciate everybody's help that's doing this with us.
I am ready to get into this dad hat. I think, and I love the name, especially with Father's Day having just been so recent. Did you sell a lot with Father's Day?
Oh yeah, and especially we did.
Great name.
Yeah, and we turned it out. And I can't say thanks enough to Tavor also. Tavor has done nothing but right by us, so we really appreciate them. They've given us a lot of support, and early on, they really helped get the word out for us. So I just want to thank Tavor really quickly for sure. The dad hat, yeah, Brendan and I, so when we were first cranking up, it was like these New England IPAs. I was a little skeptical, having brewed beer for the length of time that I have. I was kind of like, oh, okay, what's this style about exactly? And Brendan was in love with it, and so was Bailey. And so I got into this, and we started doing this, and we had brewed several of these beers, and I really enjoyed them. I gained a liking for these beers very quickly. And then one of these beers I came up with, I was like, okay, I like Warrior hops. And I was like, Warrior hops are one of those hops that got passed over. Everybody caught a hold of them for a short period of time, and then in my opinion, they got passed over too quickly. So I was like, oh, let's do one of these with Warrior. And Brendan was like, really, Warrior? That's like, nobody does Warrior. And I was like, okay, well, it's cool. Let's do Warrior then. I don't mind being by myself. I'm okay with that. So we started talking. We did this one, and this is kind of like a New England IPA with a little bit of old school hop character to it. So I was really happy with how this beer came out. In the early days, Lord knows we did. I had never brewed a New England IPA before I started working at True Respite, and we went through numerous rewritings of the recipe, and we came up with this one. So this one we came up with, it's Centennial Warrior and Citra. So Citra, not like the most unique hop to put in one of these, but the Warrior was, and I really like it. And this is kind of hence the dad hat. I guess I'm as close to the dad figure as there is in there. I don't really, yeah. But so we did this old school one, and hence the dad hat. And I don't know, when this hit, everybody fell in love with this beer very quickly. So they really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm happy with the beer. Most of our New England IPAs are falling in the neighborhood of like anywhere from like 6 to 8% alcohol. So yeah, what are you thinking? Taking your sip, BJCP.
Just
I value your
right
opinion.
Now. Well,
and I appreciate you coming to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it's been very hot today.
Yes.
And where I am is not totally cool. So, I mean, it's very refreshing. Some nice grapefruit characteristics. The bitterness is well controlled. They're extremely pleasant. The aroma is phenomenal. When I opened the can, it just almost filled the room. So you've got some tremendous aromas there. I'll go back to the camera, but I just thought it was absolutely awesome. I really enjoyed it. And what beautiful glassware you've got there.
Yeah. And I got to give credit to Brendan and Bailey both. That's our Key Mason glass, and those guys designed that glass. And I agree with you. I enjoy that a lot too. It really highlights the beer. I'm very happy with that glass. Well,
it's beautiful. So I think what I'd like to do at this point is let's talk about maybe what we've got in questions as far as the audience is concerned. Are you ready to answer a few questions?
Yep, have at it, please.
All right. I'm going to ask the first one, and then I want to bring our other brewers on screen. This one comes from Chris, and he says, Kenny, what does your brewery's slogan, "Be the Key," entail?
Yep, and great question. So it's like, what is it? It's the Eagles song. Everybody has locked, but everybody has the key. So it's like that, the keyhole and be the key. It's just like everybody has access to set themselves free. So just everybody, if you feel you're locked into something, just figure out how to be the key to the lock and put yourself in there and unlock that lock and free yourself. So yeah, and that's easier said than done. We've all gone through difficult times in our life where that's not an easy thing to perform. But yeah, it's what we strive to do, and we strive to just be the key that sets ourselves free. It's a little altruistic or something, but that's, truth be told, that's what it means.
No, I like it, and I wanted to also introduce our other brewers that we have. So I want to welcome Kolby Wood of White Elm Brewing and Mark Osborne of Adroit, excuse me. I'm determined to call that Android. Adroit Theory. So you have a comment on the question, Mark or Kenny?
I mean, we definitely do. Ours is consume life, drink art. We do different variations of that on our glassware as well. So, kudos to that, and kudos to taking the effort to put together a branded glassware. I think, the vessel it comes in helps, elevate the beer, elevate the aroma, elevate the experience. So kudos to that. The first time I went to Belgium was like in 94, 95. And I remember when I went there over to Belgium for the first time, and I got there, and still back here in the States, I was working for Old Dominion at the time, and we had nice glassware at Dominion early on, but not many other people did. And I remember the first time I got to Belgium and I went into a bar, and it was like I ordered a Rodenbach, and the Rodenbach came in the right style glass with the Rodenbach label on it. And I was just like, it blew me away. And then I ordered an Orval after that, and the Orval came in the Orval glass.
And it was like, I was there for like a long weekend. And after I was done, it was like, wow, the United States, back in the States, we have a little bit of evolution we need to go through. And it'd be nice if we could catch up to this. And I think the States has done itself incredibly proud in that way of evolving, catching up, and then really making a name for ourselves in developing unique, original beer styles, and then doing all these things right by the right glassware. There's so many breweries out there that do that these days, and I don't know. I'm really proud to be part of this community.
Well, excellent. We'll move on to the next question, and hopefully Chris got his answers. So I kind of like what Thomas is asking, because I'm a stout person also. So Thomas asks, let's talk about stouts too, please. What's your favorite style of stout, Kenny?
My favorite style of stout. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a little contrite, but like a nice barrel-aged stout is always good. Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with a nice barrel-aged stout. Keep low. Me personally, I like balance and get the bourbon flavor in there. And then it's funny. It's like I tend to like straight bourbon. I've tried some rye whiskey ones, and the rye whiskey ones are good too. I've done those a couple times. I know there's something there. I just got to figure it out. I got to work with my grain bill to figure out how to work with rye. That's a tricky one. So I like a lot of stouts. I've been lucky enough. I've traveled in Ireland a little bit. And I mean, when you drop into Ireland and get a Guinness, it is different from here in the States. And yeah, it was pretty wonderful. And I imagine every Guinness drinker is or Guinness brewer up in Baltimore is screeching at me right now. But yeah, I felt the Guinness in Ireland was really good.
Mark, you have a favorite stout?
Oh, I love stouts. I mean, I drink a stout in 100-degree weather. It doesn't matter to me. My personal preference is I do like hoppy stouts, and obviously I like black IPAs because it kind of straddles that gap. We make quite a bit of what they call pastry or dessert stouts, and while they're over the top and the diabetes in a glass is a real thing, I do think that the ones that we do are very well balanced in terms of balancing a multitude of ingredients and doing it in a way that creates the booziness, that creates that cordial-like experience, but just makes it so balanced that it's almost scary how drinkable a 12 or 14 or 16% stout can be. So they can be dangerous, but I do love those.
Kolby, how about you?
I'm a huge fan of non-adjunct barrel-aged stouts, typically terminal gravities in that like mid 1030s range. So not the crazy double mash, super thick. I prefer extended aging, development of sort of micro oxidation in barrel, and I've kind of always been of the mind that I really liked high wheat content whiskeys for the barrels, preferably older, and I'm starting to evolve a little bit into more sweet wines like port barrels. We released a beer called Catane that was a collaboration we did with Drecker we released it not that long ago. We brewed it a long time ago, that was aged in tawny port barrels. And
what kind of barrels?
Tawny port.
Okay.
Yep. Did you get those from Portugal?
Yeah, these actually came over. So at the time, they were the most expensive barrels we had purchased. I believe they were 7-year tawny port. Yeah. So lovely wine-like characteristics, but still had a lot of that, kind of vanilla and oak contribution to it. Now, we did come in with an absolute load. I believe it was like 2 pounds per oak barrel. of Ugandan vanilla, as well as pink peppercorn and Sichuan blossoms in it. And
Wait, you said you didn't like adjuncts.
Those aren't adjuncts.
Come on!
In this circumstance, so Doug, I had sent you along a handful of cans of a single barrel that we had done. That it's my favorite beer that we've released. It was a stout. It spent 2 years in a store selection Blanton's bourbon barrel, and very kind of classic American imperial stout, extended aging. So it took on some of those subtle sherry notes, some deep vanilla, coconut through mid palate, tons of like dried cocoa powder, and that's definitely my wheelhouse. And you know, the dessert pastry stouts, I love them in very, very small quantity. You know, a few ounces is totally good for me. I'm sitting here having a lovely Pilsner Urquell in the warm Nebraska sun right now. So
Ooh, I love that glass. Speaking of glassware, that's beautiful. Let's switch right quick. Thomas actually has another question, which I think is very complimentary. Bourbon or brandy barrels?
So we've been like up the road from us a bit in Maryland. We have the Sagamore distillery, and we've been getting really nice barrels out of the Sagamore. And one thing that none of us mentioned in that quick little through run is wet barrels. In my opinion, if you don't get your barrels wet, man, you start off in a weak position. And I really I'll drive long distances to get my hands on the wet barrels, like the tawny port barrels. I've wanted to do that for a while. I like really nice port wines. Dragging them over from Portugal and getting them to here is like one of the things that's always, I've been like, oh, it's like the logistics of that. I know it can be done. It's just a challenge. And so, yeah, I definitely, the Sagamore people, it's in Maryland, and those guys I think are producing, I think they're kind of they're a newer people, but if you can get to their facility up in Baltimore, man, will it blow your socks off. Those guys have done it right, and they're really nice up there. They tune me in when they have fresh barrels, and that's what I do, is that when they have fresh barrels they've just emptied, I hustle, me and my assistant brewer Brian, we've hustled up there with our vans to grab barrels the day they're emptying them, and it really, in my opinion, it makes an enormous amount of difference.
So Kenny, in our last few minutes, what's coming next? I heard sounds like a lot of things with barrels and unique ingredients. What's next at True Respite?
So doing some New England IPAs. We were brewing a nice Oktoberfest beer today, so we're already getting our Oktoberfest beer, our Marzen beer. It's not quite March, but we're doing okay. We're going to be able to park on that one for like a solid 6 to 8 weeks before we're bringing that one out. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We've been doing a lot of soured fruit beers. I used that sour Vizier yeast from Lallemand recently, and the sour Vizier yeast, if you guys haven't tried that, give that stuff a try. It's a game changer. It blew my socks off with how that worked. So we're using that. Before, when I was using like Good Belly juice and using that to sour my wort, I was dropping down like in the mid 3, like 3.5, 3.4. If I got a lucky one, I would get down to 3.3 on the pH scale. With this sour Vizier yeast, we've produced a couple beers now that have gotten down to 2.8, and they'll rattle the fillings in your teeth if you have any. But I like it. I love a good sour beer, and it's really working dynamite. And the fruit, we add a lot of fruit in with ours to kind of try and balance that. So it's really good. And I think the next thing we're going to probably start doing is some of these barrels we're turning out that we've extracted some flavors from. We'll start pumping some sour beers into the barrels. So we've gotten a couple rum barrels where we've done that too, where we've put sour beers in rum barrels, and yeah, that turned out really nice too. I was exceedingly happy with that.
I love your enthusiasm.
So-
You really describe things so deliciously. So I can't wait to hear more about what's coming up. So thank you, and cheers. That was really well done, and what a delicious beer. And so now we're going to move over to Kolby Wood, and you'll be coming back on in just a little bit, Kenny. But right now we're going to jump into Kolby and hear about his brewery. So I'm Mark, gonna knock you off for just a minute. There we go. And let's see, Kenny, we're gonna put you there. There we go. So Kolby, it is so fantastic to see you. And I want to introduce you for just a minute, if I may.
Sure.
Kolby Wood is a classically trained chef turned brewer. And he blended his passion for handcrafted beers with a sense of culinary exploration. A true believer in the DIY ethic, Kolby has played drums and bass in a below average. This was his thing, below average.
No, I didn't write it, but it's honest.
punk band, but he nearly built everything in the White Elm tap room. So
Yeah.
Kolby, there must be a lot of stories to share about the creative work you've done in the brewery. Can you share that and some highlights of the brewery?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the brewery's actually been something that I have been dreaming about since about 2004. Had an actual business plan drafted in about 2010 when I was still living in Denver. Met my wife, who's a Denver native. We had our first daughter. We both quit our jobs to move back to my home in Lincoln, Nebraska. With a long-term view of opening the brewery, we partnered up with some of our dear friends, Matt and Martha Lee Heine, who I've known for 20 some odd years, and opened up with sort of a view of never wanting to take over the world of craft beer, especially in our local market. We just wanted to be sort of a community hub. When we were talking about taglines or slogans, we never had one. We had very simple stylized secondary branding, which was a WE, and we thought it kind of embodied what we did in saying we as a community here in southeast Nebraska. So the brewery itself is it's very small. I'm sure we're probably the smallest of the four on tonight. We don't get outside of the Lincoln market too much, with exception of the stuff that goes through Tavor. So it's been really exciting in the last handful of months to partner with them and see check-ins, around the country. It's been a lot of fun. We definitely have a little of my maybe classic culinary background in as much as there is still a strong focus on classic styles there. I think it's a lot of the stuff that we drink on the daily in the brewery. Our head brewer Keith Gascoigne is an absolute master with lagers. Philly Matt McNally kind of keeps us up to date on brewing trend, and he's probably the one that drives a lot of the kind of fun adjunct driven beers, and we love making them. But for us, it's really all about being a part of our local community.
I'm sitting here looking at your beautiful copper pot beer.
Sure.
I'd love to crack it open. You've been telling me all about it, and I've been looking forward to it. Can we jump into it?
Yeah, I'm going to join you in a glass here so we could talk through it.
All right, I'm going to see if I can pour it and not spill it, but everybody will know if I did. So tell us about Copper Pot.
Sure. So Copper Pot is we've got a series that we've done with a local creamery called Ivonicone, where we've incorporated actual ice cream into the tail end of the boil of our beers. We've done very heavy lactose and adjunct additions to about an 8% stout. The idea has always been kind of mimicking an ice cream flavor. With Copper Pot, we're aiming towards a Rocky Road stout, and there's some inherent challenges in that. And that when you eat Rocky Road ice cream, there's a bite that tastes like chocolate, there's a bite that tastes like vanilla, there's a bite that tastes like whether it be almonds or peanuts. And with a beer, it's a homogeneous flavor, and so I think our big focus in building concept on this beer was how do we first encapsulate the aromatics of an ice cream stout, and it was what's it smell like when you walk in the door of Ivonico, and like a creamery has a very distinct smell, and it's very rich lactose, vanilla. It smells sweet, and so this got a fairly enormous amount of vanilla in it, recirculated over a load of cocoa nibs that were sort of backed with some kind of classic UK floor malted malts, Thomas Fawcett, pale chocolate, things like that are really going to help develop those chocolate flavors, as well as just a load of toasted almond slivers. So there's this sort of exhale on it. It picks up a little bit of crisp brown malt into like this rich nuttiness, and I think it walks the line in holding all three of those flavors, and definitely a distinct ice cream note to it, this decadence, without getting out of proportion with one or the other.
Well, I am ready for a taste. Wow, the chocolate, sweet vanilla. It really is like a bowl of ice cream. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it definitely, it's one of those that it seems like every few degrees that it warms up, there's sort of a new texture to it, a new, kind of a new nuance that pops out. And yeah, we were super happy with it. It's a fun beer, and I think that we've definitely kind of looked at these very heavy adjunct driven stouts as this is our playground, right? This is a place to have fun. There's sort of this joy de vie in craft beer that still exists, and it's around a lot of these adjunct driven beers. So we love making them.
It reminds me of when you fix like ice cream and you open a jar, or maybe you've made some chocolate fudge to put on top of it, and you pour it over that vanilla, and you just get that aroma, and maybe you got a cup of coffee there. I mean, it's really got all those wonderful characteristics all blending together, and it's so smooth. I mean, it's just enough bitterness to it that it doesn't finish sweet, but yet it tastes sweet, but it's not cloying at all. It's very just enough drying that really you don't. But it has lactose in it, right? I mean,
it has a lot of lactose in it. Yeah, a lot of lactose. But we offset that. I'm a big believer in Thomas Fawcett malts, and so we use sort of their full pantheon of roasted malts, and so you can kind of almost in lieu of hops offset some of that sweetness with roasty flavors, and maybe develop some more flavors that you would associate with chocolate, bitter baker's chocolate, things like that, as opposed to just hop bitterness, which they tend to work really well in developing those flavors and accentuating the adjuncts that you'll add on stouts.
Well, I know some sweet stouts or milk stouts can sort of leave you like you got to clear your throat when you after you get done. And this just has a very clean, I mean, it's a definite sweet finish, but there's just enough bitterness there that it balances it out so nice and smoothly. This would be dangerous now. This is what, a 8.2%? Is that what I recall?
8.0, yep.
8.2. So 16 ounces of that would be nice.
It definitely could creep up on you. And you said you're in a little bit of a warm weather right now, so it's 16 ounces when the sun's shining is probably plenty adequate. But you get into those winter months, and a few of them can go down fairly easy.
Well, it's delicious, but there's some questions piling up here, Kolby.
Sure.
So do you mind if we jump into some of those questions?
No, I'd love to.
I'm going to read the first one, and then I'm going to bring the other brewers on while you're answering that first question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting one. I think you'll like this one. So, Kolby, what's your favorite comment or rating from the Untapped app?
So that must be someone local, because I did a local podcast in which a few beers in, I started talking about having a little bit of fun with some of the negative reviews, and they tend to be fairly humorous. So I don't know how PG we are here, so I don't know if that I could actually say my favorite one. But
so there he is.
I do want
to hang up on us.
No. That was well timed though. That by grace of God, internet connections fail.
All right. I think unless somebody wants to, I realize Untapped brewers could keep going forever. If somebody wants to make a quick comment before we leave Untapped, if there's a kind comment, I think it'd be good.
So the only thing I would say for Untapped, if there's Untapped, if there's Untapped people out there, do me a favor when you write a bad review, or you give it like a 1-star, 2-star. Give me some kind of verbiage. To be honest, I scroll through a lot of the 5 stars and the 1 and 2 stars, and I just whip past them if there's not a comment. So give me something to sink my teeth into, and give me something to get a hold of, because I do read them and I do value them, and I take them to heart. The ones that attack my mom, I don't take to heart so much, but all the other ones I do.
There was so right after we opened the brewery, I was like on this road trip back to see my wife's family, and we're listening to this Bright Eyes album. Like they're a band out of Omaha who amazing, like kind of American folk group. But there's a line where Conor Ober says something akin to like, "I don't read the reviews because I'm not singing for you," and I hate to say that because it's dismissive of Untapped. I think there's incredibly valuable information that can be gleaned from Untapped. From quality control perspective, from trend, from you can get into an echo chamber very easily, but there's also, we had a group of guys who they thought it was funny. Just unanimously across the board, every beer they had was 0.25, and it's like, there was a beer that we spent a lot of time, poured our hearts and souls into, and then that's the first check-in, and you go, come on, man.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not good.
Brian, you haven't weighed in. Do you have a quick comment on Untapped?
It is a good forum. It's a good communication side of things for beer, and good community as well. But yeah, sometimes you get those off comments or things you look at as brewers. When we look at them, we get devastated for sure. But we can't focus on them. Sometimes it is just those random people doing those 2.5 ratings just to be goofy or to be cheeky. But that typically as brewers, when we taste our beer and we know it's going out well, and we know that beer is worthwhile and dedicated to the fans that want to drink good beer. So it's definitely a good forum, but we don't put any stock in it either.
I love your answer. Okay, let's move into a couple of others that we've got here. So I believe, Kolby, you can answer this one. Well, Let's see. Here we go. I'm a brown ale fan, but few make a brown ale. What do the brewers here think of the brown ales? And does anyone brew any of them?
I think I don't know. I think that brown ales maybe were one of those styles, like, you know, the color wheel beers were like a lot of the styles that got me into craft beer back 20 years ago. So I always have a soft spot. I'm, you know, Samuel Smith Nut Brown is like always going to be one of those beers that I drink whenever I see it available, and I think, God, I wish I could pull this off. I think that it's one of those styles, though, that, you know, it struggles to resonate with a wide audience. And so dependent upon brew system size, a lot of breweries struggle to occupy a tank for 19 to 25 days or whatever it may be, with a style that you know, they're sluggish in sales. And it's unfortunate. I think some of it's a swinging pendulum. I think some of those styles, you know, especially in local markets, will come back at some stage, and I hope they do. And I hope that they also receive the quality control and attention that they deserve to be at their absolute best.
So it's difficult economically to make it work. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we you know, we have a bunch of we have a handful of 15 barrel fermenters. And every one of those is like a vanity project beer. It's just like, it's what we want to drink around the brewery, that we don't care if it sells or not, you know. And a brown ale would kind of fit into those for us, because 15 barrels of it, I'd be counting it for a few months, you know.
I have a little bit different story. Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we do one called Scrum and Hooker at our place, and we use Simpson's chocolate malt, and then we use the extra special caramel malts in that one. And our Scrum and Hooker really lights up the place for us. And man, it's my opinion, people that drink dark beers, they drink dark beers when it's 20 degrees outside, and they drink dark beers when it's 120 degrees outside. They don't give a damn about temperature. So yeah, and we turn out this Scrum and Hooker, and it just goes for us. It's very steady for us. And actually, in the Maryland Craft Brewers competition, we took one of the best in shows on that last year with that beer, and I was really happy with how that one came out. And that's like one of my ones that I really like too. One of the other co-owners.
Say that name a little slower.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scrum and Hooker. So it's a rugby term. Okay. Yeah. So that's what it goes to. So, and yeah, that's been a crowd pleaser for us. So we've been very lucky with that. And yeah, the people, dark beer drinkers, they don't care about temperature outside. And yeah, so it's really nice.
Brian knew what that was, didn't you, Brian?
Well, yeah, rugby terms. Yeah, I was down in New Zealand for a while and learned some rugby. I'm a soccer player by, you know, that's my game, but I learned some rugby while I was down there. That's where I learned my brewing craft. But yeah, getting back on the brown ale side of things, you know, here in Richmond, you know, Legend Brown Ale, which is Legend, has been around is a brewery in Richmond that started craft beer in Richmond 27 years ago. And so, you know, as a brown ale, they have the market, and they are beloved here for that beer. And so we decided not to brew a brown ale. That's kind of our stance on that. Still a good beer, though.
All right, we will move on to the next question then. Let's take this other one. I think you'll like this one, Kolby. This is not exactly beer related, but what was your favorite cover to perform in your band, and what was the band's name?
Well, jealous you're in a band, Kolby.
They were brutal. So there's a benefit in like playing basement shows, that every show you play and then every subsequent practice session you get subtly better. So you feel like you need to change your name because the last time you played is not representative of who you are today. So I think we ended on like petting zoo or some nonsense like that. So we covered a handful of songs. One of the more spectacular failures of believe it or not was actually covering Black Flag's Rise Above, which it's not like any of them were particularly talented musicians in that era, but it was what it was. But we actually sort of had these we're going to play to the crowd. This is 2001, 2, 3. So White Stripes were having a moment. I was playing drums in this band. It doesn't take a whole lot to be able to play White Stripes drums. Like, it is what it is. If you can count to 3, you're good. And we very quickly realized that chord progressions, pretty much everything in Fell in Love with a Girl was Bryan Adams' Summer of '69. And so we decided that the best thing that we could do was rewrite the lyrics as much as humanly possible, sans the chorus, and condense Summer of '69 to about a 2-minute long song. And that became our thing, where I was and that was it. Like, that's all I had to do, which was perfect for my skill level.
Well, that was a good question. I don't think everybody needs to weigh in on that one.
Still, Kolby, you're in a band, man. That was awesome.
But I think this one will be fun. And Kolby, we'll start with you. So, Copper Pot is the name of your beer. What is
Correct.
the meaning behind its name?
Well, I don't think you can make a Rocky Road beer without like finding some Goonies reference, right? So Chester Copperpot was the explorer who died that the Goonies surpassed on their way to finding One-Eyed Willie's treasure. And we went so far in the artwork, you can probably see it there. We actually have Chunk's list of the worst things that he's done hidden in the background of the label. And our designer's incredible. She hid some of the words that you don't want to see on a beer can behind our own fonts, things like puke. But yeah, we've got Chunk's confession to the Patelli gang on the backside of the label.
When I was recently during the lockdown, I was going for the new haircut, and I was trying to get the Joe Strummer mohawk going.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I ended up with the sloth haircut. Yeah, no, it ended up like sloth. So I'll take it.
There's a fine line between Joe Strummer and Travis Bickle, and it's like you got to find the right barber.
Yeah. Well, and my wife cut this one, so
I
think she did a good job.
Well done.
Well, Kenny, do you want to comment on Dad Hat?
On Dad Hat, or the title of the beer?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't. Okay, the Dad Hat was just kind of. It has the goofy hat on it with the corduroy thing around it. So we were all coming up with like things that our dad embarrassed us by, and that was definitely one. All of our dads wore one of those hats, and it was just like, oh no, you're not wearing that hat out with us, are you? So yes, that's kind of what we did with that.
Well, Brian, we've got yours coming up next. Do you want to give a little bit of where that name came from?
The Mamma's Mean Cobbler? Yeah, this is a kind of a spawn off of one of our brewers. One of his ideas, this was back 3 years ago when we decided to do this beer. It's a spinoff of one of our what we call our Root Series beers, which uses local ingredients, local peaches in this case. And then he decided to kind of come up with this concept of a cobbler beer, kind of making it a pastry beer. And he came up, we were trying to come up with a name with it. I won't go into the details because we'll do the description when we do the pouring of the beer and tasting of it. But when coming up with the name, our marketing department was coming up with wacky ideas of should we name it Cobbler something, Cobbler this, and he said came up and said, well, my mama, this is grandma, my mama makes a mean cobbler, and instantly my coworker Kate and I were like, that's it, Mama's mean cobbler, that's it, we're doing this, and then the label wise, as you can see, kind of like being on a blanket with a big peach in the front was kind of the impetus to do this beer, and it's a fun one to do. But yeah, it was kind of off a whim on most great ideas, I think, most label ideas, and I know you guys all know this, Kenny and Kolby. Trying to come up with a name for a beer is almost impossible these days. It is almost impossible. Yes. Everything's taken. Everything's kind of through. You kind of go through the trademark list, or at least we do. We kind of go through an internet search and see how many people have used it. And if it's a unique, you're golden. So that's the kind of process we go through.
Yep.
This is a fun one to derive.
Well, as we wrap up this particular segment, Kolby, I'm going to knock you off, and we will catch you just a little bit later. Brian will be actually next, but Kenny, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what's going on at your brewery coming up?
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff coming up on the brewery. We're nice part is we get to open back up soon, so we're looking forward to that. We're gonna definitely abide by all the social distancing and abide by everything that's going on in Maryland. But we're looking forward to getting the tap room back open in a very limited way. And then we're brewing a nice Oktoberfest beer is coming up again. So we're brewing an Oktoberfest. We're also we have an experimental and X series beers we have. And we've done the experimental series. We've done the incognito hops. We've also done some different IPAs with zest from different fruits. And tomorrow we're going to try one of these raw IPAs. So we're going to bring it into the kettle, and we're going to warm it up to 180, and that's it. No boil whatsoever. And then we're going to fire it over to the whirlpool, and then we'll put some. On this one, we're putting hops in at 180, and we'll just whirlpool the hops in and get that nice juicy quality out of it. There's going to be a lot of incognito and a lot of centennial in the whirlpool, and then we'll fire that into it. We've taken to using this really nice like English ale yeast strain from a guy named Jasper Ackerboom, and it's Jasper yeast. And I can't say enough for Jasper. Really good guy.
Well, and Kolby, I did not finish asking you because we wanted to hear what was going on at your brewery.
So at White Elm, we're open in a limited capacity for on-site consumption with the Nebraska DHM. So there's a nice little sense of normalcy there. We've got 2 tap rooms. One's in the historic Haymarket in Lincoln, so we've got a nice open air patio. Our focus is it's going to continue to be incredibly short-sighted. We make our brew schedule about a month in advance. We get together at the first of the month when we're putting in grain orders and kind of decide what we're going to make. Our designer it kind of works with our lack of direction, if you will, and comes up with labels for us and makes it all happen. So, I think long-ranging plans, our barrel program continues to grow. I think that's one of the biggest focuses of the brewery, and we're just going to keep churning out fun beer and enjoy doing it.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed the Copper Top. Very nice brew. I will continue to work on it a little while and enjoy it. And we'll catch you back in just a few minutes, Kolby.
Great.
Meanwhile, we're going to jump into a conversation with Brian Nelson so we can hear about his Mama's Cobbler. So we will catch you a little bit later, Kolby, so don't go too far.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, Brian, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. Hey, shout out to echo what Kenny said about Jasper Ackerboom. Yeah, the Jasper yeast we use those a lot. We use his yeast a lot as well. some of the specialty stuff we do are one-off. So yeah, kudos to him. He's a good friend of mine and does some really quality work.
Well, I want you to hang on for just a moment. We're kind of into our second half, and I want to touch on that for just one quick minute. So this is part 2 of our program. We will have 2 brewers. Brian will be the next brewer, and then Mark after that. But first, I wanted to mention that this event is brought to you by Precision Fermentation. They're the creator of Brew Monitor, the industry's first comprehensive real-time fermentation monitoring system. Brew Monitor live streams dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, and conductivity from existing fermentation tanks to any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Continuous sampling 24/7, remote tracking, deep data analysis can greatly improve operational efficiency as well as help prevent problems to ensure batch-to-batch consistency. Now, we're going to start segment 2 with Brian Nelson.
All right.
There we go. All right. So Brian has brewed in the craft brew industry for 10 years. He started his brewing career in Auckland, New Zealand, then teamed up with Hardywood Park Craft Brewery in Richmond in 2011. Brian is currently the vice president of production, head brewer, and resident brewery engineer for Hardywood Park.
Unfortunately.
He oversees the brewing processes, recipe developments of both Hardywood locations. Brian, first thing I want to mention, a friend of mine drives over 100 miles to buy your barrel-aged gingerbread stout. He's nice enough to share it with me. You must really be doing some things right to justify that.
Well, we definitely try. We definitely try that. That's one of our biggest, I guess, nationally known and sort of bigger seasons we have is our gingerbread stout season, the barrel-aged versions. We're actually starting to work on right now. We actually did a batch of gingerbread stout to put in barrels that we're receiving next week. So it gets a lot of age on the barrels before we release it out into the wild or into the public. So that is one that's laborious for sure because it is barrel work. All these guys, all these brewers know that too. It's a lot of work, but we're receiving a full truckload of bourbon barrels coming in this next week, which is about 288 per truckload. So we're going to try to find some space for them in our facility and load them up with some beer.
Wow. And how long will it be in the barrels?
We'll probably take it out sometime in mid-November. So early to mid-November. So my typical bourbon barrel age is no less than 12 weeks. Hopefully it's more than that. Typically it's more than a year. Some of our deeper stouts like Cassowary and Trickery, which I know somebody's drinking on the forum here. I saw that. That gets no less than a 1 year age on it. And we've got a lot of barrel stock in various different styles of barrels, very different type of distillers that we have. So it's a fun little project we have. But the bourbon gingerbread stout does have we're using some Heaven Hills barrels that are coming into us this week.
So if we make a trek, what else is there that's kind of a highlight besides the gingerbread stout?
There's a lot going on. So our Richmond facility is a little bit on hiatus right now. We're doing a renovation of that. We're actually moving from our old, the building, if you guys have been there, in Richmond off of the OMB 2410 location, the old brick building that we have. That's getting moved over to the building that's adjacent to it, which we own. And then we're moving that brewery over there. So that's actually a decent project. It's going to be fun to revitalize the brewery, to be honest with you, because we put it through its paces and it's had some wear and tear. So that's the fun for me from the engineering perspective to get it back up and running and to brew some decent beer on it. So that's going on there. Here in West Creek, we're trying to do some our West Creek facility, which is our production facility. We have a 60-barrel BrauCon system, which is large. It's automated, but we're doing some fun stuff to split batches off and do things like Mamaw's Mean Cobbler, which we're going to taste tonight and run you through some tastings tonight. That are fun spin-offs of some of the beers we do, but also doing some separate fermentations off of the brew house using some Kvik strains for IPAs and things like that. So it's complicated, but we're making it work. It's been a fun challenge, if anything.
Well, as you know, I haven't been to your location, but I have friends that have.
Mhm.
Now, just looking at this background that I've got here,
Yeah.
this looks pretty immense. And now we switch over to where you're literally standing right now, and that looks pretty immense.
Yeah, this is our brew house behind me. This is our BrewCon system. Again, it's highly automated, which I was reluctant to go into off of a manual system. When I cut my teeth on brewing, it was all manual. It was home brewing when I started. Caught Eric and Patrick's, who are the co-founders of Hardywood's. Cold called them and said, "Hey, let's brew some beer together." And we did some pilot batches and things like that, and made up to a 20-barrel brew house, which I helped put together in the beginnings in 2011 when we started, and that's what we started with. It was very full-on, hands-on, as many brewers do, and then brewed some great beer off of that brew system, and hoping to still brew some great beer off that brew system as we go through a 3-month hiatus before it gets renovated in the other building. But design this whole system as well with BrewCon's help, and try to scale up and make the beers the same way they tasted as they did on the traditional brew house, which was an NSI brew house. For those of you who don't know, those guys have gone out of business since then, so parts are going to be hard to find if we need to do anything, so it's going to be some engineering involved there, but scaling up was difficult. We had some challenges there, and scaling up our gingerbread stout here was scaling up was pretty difficult as well, but our brewers have learned and taken that curve very quickly, and we're brewing great beer off this brew house, and it's much more efficient for sure.
Well, it is absolutely stunning, and the location that I am quasi in, I mean, that's
our tap room, behind you. So that's when you enter in the building. That's our tap room. It's got vaulted ceilings, and the ceilings were made that way for the fermentation vessels behind. You can see those big stainless vessels behind there. We do have 360 barrel fermenters, which we have to brew 6 times on our brew house to fill those up. And we got some room to grow. We're running out of, I like to say we have room to grow, but we run out of space very quickly with all the things that are there, especially barrels as well. I'm very passionate about our barrel program. So we get different barrels, and I'm glad to hear Kenny and Kolby, everybody's getting barrels in from different places and different styles, and different bourbon distillers. We have Basil Hayden's Woodford Reserves. We have some weird ones from Few Distillery, and we've used some Sagamore rye barrels before as well. So all this stuff is.
What do you call a weird barrel?
We've got some weird. We got some Copper Fox barrels, which is local to Virginia, which has been a really. We only got 2 of them, so it was a very limited release, and I did a barrel blend with those, but it provided some smokiness to it, because their distilling process and their aging process, it is a bit on the smoky side, but it was an authentic cherry wood smoke that came out of it. So I thought that was interesting, and we're doing a lot of barrel blends.
Smoke. I mean, some of the smokes can be rather acrid.
Right, and this wasn't. It was nice and smooth. That was the difference. It wasn't that. Chloroseptic kind of smokiness which may come out during that, that process or that aging. This was very, very smooth, very subtle, but it was there. So those are the kind of interesting barrels we've kind of squirreled away, 2 or 3 of them. My brewers will sometimes be like, all right, I'm going to put this away. And we're like, all right, I'm not going to hear that. I won't hear that too much, but we'll check on it in a couple of years and see what happens with it. So.
When you say weird, you really mean special.
Well, special, yes. And most of our stuff is, the clean, beer, no microbes and everything else. And that's kind of not unique to us, but that's what we do. We haven't delved into much of the sour program, which I know Adroit Theory and a couple of the breweries that, here are probably doing. That's something that we like to, especially in this facility, keep our process clean, just because we're doing a lot of beer out of this facility, and don't want to have any mishaps and detriments to our flagship. So,
well, I've heard all about this beer. How about you unpacking Maymaw's Mean Cobbler while I do my best to do a nice pour?
Let's open it up. So this is, again, a derivation of what we call our Peach Triple. So I don't know how well you can see this. Let me see if I can get it back here. That's not good lighting. So this the Peach Triple is one of our Reserve Series, Root Series beers, what we call them now. That is a beer that uses peaches, local peaches. This year we were able to secure up to 2,500 pounds of local peaches in the Peach Triple. And the Peach Triple will then become Mama's Mean Cobbler. So in this Belgian base, it's a Belgian triple base. Very simple recipe on the brewing side, on the malt side. Standard malts when it comes to Belgian triples. It's 8.2% ABV. But then, after fermentation is completed, then we'll introduce our peaches. And we do supplement with the local fruit because it's very difficult to find a local fruit provider that'll provide 48 pounds per barrel or 36 pounds per barrel of peaches. We also do another 12 pounds of apricot in there as well, in order to just kind of boost up that aromatic quality that I think apricot does kind of lend to the peach quality. You get so much, at least in my opinion, you get so much peaches in there, you kind of have some diminishing returns in there, so you can keep adding.
There was some apricot in there.
Yeah, and you won't get too much of a peach quality to it. It'll just keep being thick full of peaches. But the apricot gives it that boost over top. And then in this particular derivation, post-fermentation, post-secondary fermentation of the peaches, then we add some lactose to it. Which gives it a little bit of more body, a little bit more sweetness to it. And then there's a couple of specific ingredients we do. We do vanilla bean. And I can, sympathize with anybody who's using whole Madagascar vanilla beans on the cost it takes to integrate those in there, because vanilla beans are super expensive. They're about $300 to $400 or $395. I think we paid for it, the $415 per pound of vanilla bean. And then adding some cinnamon to give it that kind of extra cobbler boost. And then the secret ingredient to us, I guess it's no secret because I've been telling everybody about it, but it's toasted coconut. Toasted coconut kind of provides, if you really get into this beer, gets a little bit of that pastry, crusty. So it almost comes off like a cobbler-based beer. And that was the ingredient that when, my brewer originally came up with the concept, he kept on throwing cinnamon at it, and it just kept on being a cinnamon bomb. And I was like, well, let's try that. Let's try some toasted coconut. He put that in there, and it was
crust to me.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's what we were going for, that little pastry pie crust.
A little bit bready, but that toast. So that's where you're getting the toast from, is the toasted coconut.
That's right. And that is our bulletproof, what we call our bulletproof ingredient. Sometimes if we have a beer that we're like, nah, and these are all adjunct beers. This is not like a Pilsner we're adding toasted coconut to. But, if it's a adjunct beer, especially with our beer club, we call it the Family Tree Beer Club, if we're looking to do some exclusive beers for them, if we need just a touch of something or to round it out, toasted coconut is the way to go. It's a fun one for us to use. We use it often. So that's kind of our add toasted coconut, maybe coffee, and it comes to like this great blend of beers, especially in a stout.
Wow. Well, it is a phenomenal beer, and it sounds like a ton of work.
It is. We go through a pasteurization or a gourmet pasteurization process each time when we add these ingredients, just to make sure it's beer safe, aseptic, so we don't have any micro issues, and it's shelf stable. So those things, it's not the easy route for sure. It's not the most cheap route, but it makes for a fun beer for sure. I wouldn't drink more than one of these, to be honest with you. That's not my style, but it is a nice dessert beer to kind of relax with and taste. It is fairly sweet. It's more than, sweeter than the Belgian triple is, but you get that body and that nice aromatic quality to it.
Yeah, but you still got a little bit of Belgian phenolics in it, which I think is very complimentary.
It is. Thank you very much.
I think it blends well with the cinnamon. Now, what do you put, cinnamon sticks in it to?
We do a combination of, well, we've done it both ways actually. This past one we did powdered cinnamon, so it's a Vietnamese cinnamon. We've used Ceylon cinnamon in the past, which didn't get quite the sharpness to it that it needs. The Vietnamese cinnamon, I think, is the best one. We've done sticks versus powder, ground up, cinnamon, and we feel like it integrates a little bit better with the cinnamon powder.
Now, we were talking to Kolby about, again, when you get the lactose beers, they can sometimes leave a very unpleasant sweet finish if you're not careful. This is relatively dry. I mean, it's sweet, but it's got a drying effect in it. So where do you get the dryingness?
Well,
where's the bitterness come from?
That's a great question, because the triple itself actually attenuates fairly low. We're using some sugars in there, some turbinado sugars in there to dry that out in the base beer. You add the peaches on top of that adds some more fermentation, a little bit of more sweetness, but most of that is fermented out. You get a little bit of residual there, but then the lactose kind of just rounds it out to us. And then we've actually had different levels of lactose we've added in there. We felt that, there is, again, diminishing returns on how much lactose you can add before it does become cloying and kind of, not pleasant. But we think we found the balance in there where it's not, you still get that tartness, a little bit of tartness from the fruit itself, that kind of balances the sweetness that's coming back from the lactose that we add.
Well, you got ahead of me. That was the other question, because I was wondering if you had blended it with a little bit of a sour beer, because there's a tanginess, a lower pH than you would expect.
Yeah, and that's all coming from that fruit fermentation. Everything we do on the fruit side of things is always a secondary fermentation. So we let the yeast, the Saccharomyces, get all the way down to terminal, and then we add the fruit to it at the end. But we also have to make that safe as well. Again, going through that gourmet pasteurization is important. But then it goes through a re-fermentation. The yeast is a little bit tired. We usually spun off the tanks, basically encapsulating any sort of natural carbonation within there, so it keeps the aromas within that beer, within that tank. And it, again, this goes through a fairly rigorous secondary fermentation, because there is so much fruit added to it. But it helps in the balance in the beer in the end.
Brian, let me ask you a question. It was very meaningful to me when I was working on my mead certification. Mm-hmm. And I was asking a brewer on his mead just how he got that strawberry flavor. And so he got the bottle, and he said, "Now, Doug, look at that bottle." And he said, "Man, go up about 40%. And that's about how much fruit, percentage-wise,
right, Sure. Yeah. One of the things when we go through our processing of this, there's a certain amount of loss we always look at in our process. Depending on IPAs, they're somewhere around the 12 to 15% range, because it's so highly hopped. Our lager is around 6 to 7%. This peach triple, because we're taking the loss out of it, which we typically in a Belgian, we'll probably call 10% in that triple. If we were to do just a Belgian triple, probably 10%, maybe a little less than that. But when you add the fruit to it, when you calculate the loss there, get all the pulp and everything else out, and you'll notice this beer has a lot of haze to it. That's all the pectins from the fruit. The amount of fruit actually adds enough volume and liquid and flavor to it, and that volume to it, that we actually don't calculate any loss. So whatever goes in the fermentation vessel stands, and then we add the fruit to it, which is a ton of fruit. And then we don't calculate any loss going through any of our process, through our filtration process or anything like that. Everything else, that's all just going to be there. So if we brew just 260 barrels, whatever it is, that's what's going to come out. We just kind of negate any loss, because we're pumping that much fruit into it as a percentage. So
it's kind of the color is phenomenal. I mean, it really is kind of an apricot peach color. I mean, I think it is a gorgeous color for a fruit beer, and almost spot on with your label.
I know that was all. The labels were done in house too, which was fun too. We have some very talented folks in our marketing department. That Maddie is our marketing director, and she comes up with some fantastic label designs.
Well, Maddie did well. Well, let's move into the questions, because I think we could keep talking about this beer maybe longer than we should, because I bet some folks have got some good questions in here. So let me, I'm going to try and kind of pick one. All right. So here's a good one. I think you will like this one. And I'm going to bring on our other brewers while you're answering it.
Absolutely.
So Chris asks, Brian, is dipping a gingerbread cookie into a glass of gingerbread stout overkill?
I mean, it's up to you, I suppose. I wouldn't doubt it might be pretty good. It depends on how soft you like your cookies, I suppose. I don't know. That's a good move, though. It's a good move. We did do what did we do? We did a blend last year of gingerbread stout with some eggnog last year. It was our rum barrel aged gingerbread stout. We had eggnog mixed that was part of our blend at our tap room, and it was fantastic. Apparently, people went bonkers for it. We only had a limited amount of eggnog, but it did go well. But gingerbread cookie could do it well as well.
Well, I hate to admit it, I have not tried mine yet, so I'm looking forward to that. But I think I'm going to get a cookie.
So the Peach Cobbler, after you put that lactose in it, Brian, what's its final degree Plato? Where does this thing land at?
Yeah, so the base triple gets down to like 2.8 Plato, somewhere around there, fairly low, relatively speaking. But we'll bump it up to around 5 or 6 Plato with the lactose. Yeah, sometimes a little bit more. Depends on
Okay.
It's not super cloying. It's not like.
And at what level do you get turned off?
Oh, as far as like cloyiness, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit above where we're at right now. I mean, this beer is great. Again, I'll have one of them. This isn't my go-to. But this is probably my threshold, I suppose.
Very cool. Thank you.
All right, so I think we've got a good next question here, because it's actually been asked several times. So they wanted to know how long you allowed the fruit to steep for Maymaws.
Well, from a processing side, when the local fruit we get, we do a pasteurization, what we call gourmet pasteurizations, between 140 and 160 degrees. We'll set that for about a half hour. That way it gets aseptic, and we know that it's safe to put in beer. We do supplement with a company called Oregon Fruit, which provides great fruit for in a pureed fashion that is easy and aseptic to pump right in, because there is so much fruit that we put in this beer. But as far as like fermentation wise, I mean it'll be it'll ferment out in probably 3 to 4 days, I think, tops on the beer itself post primary fermentation. So you have that 7 to 8 day, maybe 9 day fermentation of the peach triple or the triple itself, and then we provide the fruit on top of that, which the yeast will consume all those sugars as well.
Yep.
Anybody else do any fruit beers?
Yeah, and we are experiencing the exact same thing. So yeast, when they're mowing through stuff, I mean, if you hand them like sucrose, they'll eat sucrose first. And then if you hand them fructose, they eat fructose next, maltose, and then maltotriose. So they go through all these things. But yeah, Brian, thank you very much for sharing what you share, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm following the exact same pattern you are. And that, because I found if I throw the fruit in too early, the yeast mow through the fructose, and when they go to the maltose and the maltotriose, they're kind of like, I've eaten enough. I'm kind of done here, and I'm checking out, and whatever's left over, you clean it up. I'm done with it. And then that's where you end up with the really not so pleasant sweet beers. And right. I know there's a lot of breweries out there right now that are pumping fruit into cold beer, and those beers are very, very popular, and more power to those breweries. They're producing something that the public wants. So yeah, and they were innovators. They did something before anybody else did. So I respect those breweries as well.
Before we move on, Mark, did you have a comment on the fruit beers?
I did have a question about the pasteurization. Do you guys actually own like pasteurization equipment and you're pasteurizing your bottles, or is this all done in like the kettle?
No, we good. It's a good question because we have a couple vessels and a heat exchanger that do it for us. It's an ad hoc sort of heat exchanger and pasteurization mode, so that it does take a little bit of time. We've relegated a couple. Well, there's two different methods we've done it. We have a couple 3-barrel fermenters, which I do, which I've modified the glycol jackets to basically accommodate steam. So
why did you laugh, Brian?
Well, it's a means to an end, I guess. It's kind of like an engineered way to do this on the fly, but it works well. We'll put all the fruit into this 3-barrel fermenter, close it up, put it under pressure. We have not under pressure, the steam jacket or a steam generator go through. It's a little, mobile steam generator that goes through, and then we'll just recirculate through that, pasteurize it, and gets it up to temperature. That can take, it could take up to about an hour to get it up to that temperature, but we're willing to do that depending on how much fruit we're doing. But it does do that, and then we'll basically, usually it's a larger tank. We're pushing all that fruit in because it can hold up to 90 gallons worth of fruit within it, and just push it in. And then that'll start the re-fermentation very quickly. We'll flush that tank with the beer, and then the process is done. So we can do that multiple times, but it's been working out really well for us, for sure.
All right. So
who gets to clean that tank?
One quick question, and then we want to hear what's going on. Do you add extract or puree, and is it pre or post terminal?
It's all fruit. It's all puree. It's all post terminal. Yep. So all the during fermentation, when the fermentation goes down, we're all done with the primary fermentation. Then we'll introduce the fruit. It kind of shocks the yeast again, gets it re-fermented again, and that's where we get our secondary fermentation and all that yeast, all that fruit content from it.
Excellent. So what can we expect from apparently the very creative Hardywood Brewery?
Well, we're trying to be creative. We've got a lot of like fun. Again, having one, our smaller breweries under construction, so we're kind of shut off after the COVID thing hit. We decided that it wasn't quite the right response to be, running 2 breweries at one time, because we weren't having any sort of people coming to both breweries, and we were going to focus on just all our efforts on one brew house. But that, creates some good challenges. So what we've been doing is doing some batches of wort of good high quality wort that we're doing some IPAs with, and then splitting them off into smaller fermenters. I brought over 3, or actually more than that, 4 20-barrel fermenters from our downtown location over here, so that we can divert wort into different fermenters, use different yeast, do some biotransformation hops on different fermentations, so we get some different characteristics with. So it's been fun. It's been challenging. My production manager is absolutely giving me hell all the time about how to balance all these tanks and how to get all this in cans, but we're doing a good job. We've got a Hefeweizen coming out this weekend. We've got a wheat beer that's on Citra hops, who's on the hoppier side. We've got some new IPAs coming out that which I'm actually, Kenny, I'm glad to hear you using some different hops on the New England style IPAs, which we've been doing. Try some Bramlin Cross on mid fermentation hops. I'm going to try Warrior as well, because I want to try that as well. But Bramlin Cross, I did that the other day on one beer. I wanted to just like give it out. It's one of my favorite hops. It's an English style hop, but it throws off some wild characters mid fermentation, which I thought was super fun. Also, Idaho 7 too. Idaho 7.
Oh,
it's fun.
Yeah, I like Idaho 7. And when you were down in Yeah, when you were down in New Zealand, you must have gone over to like Abel Tasman,
Yep.
just on the north end of the South Island, and they have a bunch of really fun hops there.
They
I
do.
was lucky enough to travel down there, and that's a beautiful area and great hops.
You know the funny the funny part of that, when I was down there, so this is in like 2007 through 2009. They were all in the Cascade. American Cascade was like the biggest thing they'd ever seen. So they were importing like crazy and like doing all these like wild like high hop Cascade hops. And I was like, dude, what's going on? I have no idea. But that and they were selling 6-packs for $17.99, New Zealand dollars, which is around $15.99 a 6-pack down there, which was funny. But yeah, it was a crazy area. They're doing great on hops though. I mean, New Zealand hops are fantastic.
Well, this was fantastic,
and it's a
Brian.
pretty beautiful
I
area.
appreciate all your time.
Indeed.
And we're going to be moving into Mark in just a moment. So again, thank you very much. And this is definitely a cheers.
Cheers.
All right. So Mark, you've been waiting patiently for a while. We're going to hear from you. Mark Osborne is the founder and owner of Adroit Theory Brewing Company. He's a serial entrepreneur that started several companies prior to launching Adroit. And this was his first foray into the beer industry. He started the brewery with the express purpose of bringing palate-changing beers with branded in dark arc format to the Virginia residents. He started with esoteric beers and barrel aging, but has expanded into IPAs, fruited sours, dessert stouts, as well as some classic styles like lagers and saisons. He has pushed the distribution footprint to include much of the U.S., and he recently began exports to Europe, Japan, Korea, and Australia. His mission, however, has remained unchanged. He wants to make extremely interesting beers on a consistently rotating basis and package them in a beautiful yet sometimes disturbing format. Mark, that is quite an introduction. And it really sounds like your place could justify a trip in and of itself. So what are some memorable aspects of a visit to your brewery?
Well, of course, when you walk in, you will be greeted, of course, by, both types of music, black metal and death metal. So, we cover all bases in that regard. Turn to volume 11. But it's pretty fun. So at the tasting room, the fun thing, other than the metal theme and some of the over-the-top things and events that we throw for ourselves, is that it's always changing and it's always evolving. So we release, on average, 3 to 5 brand new beers every single week, which means every year we're making quite a bit of brand new beers, in addition to some beers that we revisit. But the nice thing is that when you walk in the door, you're going to have 15 or 16 new choices that you've never had before, and you can run through that sample and enjoy all of them. And if you come back 2 or 3 weeks later, you're going to have another 8, 10, 12 beers to choose from. Most people love that. The flip side of that, of course, is that you have that one that you loved and you want to get it again, and it is long gone, and we have no intention of remaking it. So that's the
is there a recipe you do remake?
We have maybe a dozen, 20 or so beers that we revisit from time to time, sometimes once a year, sometimes every few years. But oftentimes we're tweaking them and changing them to the point where they're not even the same beer that they were, 3 or 4 years ago. But we do have some concepts that are the same. So you're always going to have something, in a hoppy world. We're going to have something in a fruited sour world. We tend to have lots of stouts. And then we've started just recently, just this year, as a matter of fact, branching out into some more classic styles. Like we just did a Mexican lager, which was beautiful. Some saisons, kolsch, things like that are, again, two styled, not the kind of crazy over the top things that we're known for.
Wow. That must encumber you a little bit to make something that's not just over the top.
Well, it's what brewers like to drink, right? Like when you go to visit a new brewery, I mean, you don't get the pastry stout, you get their lager or their pilsner, because that's going to tell you, how good of a brewer they are. And so we decided to get kind of back to basics this year and kind of, flex our chops a little bit and let people know that, hey, yes, we do and have done some kind of crazy things over the years. But at the end of the day, we can brew, a beautifully clean two-style, non-adjuncted, straight up classic pilsner or classic lager that will hold its own against other people's. And I will tell you, they're great. The only rub is you have to factor in a certain amount of consumption by the brewers and the brewer staff, because they'll plow through at least 2 or 3 kegs, by themselves.
So do any of those become like base beers? I know a lot of breweries will brew some rather middle of the road beers and use them as base beers.
I wish we had the luxury of doing that. I mean, with us, having enough product to sell is really the biggest issue that we've been experiencing, particularly over the last 3 years, where, demand has just so outstripped what we can make. So we do have some stout recipes and some like barley wine and quad recipes that we do try to brew much larger batches, and then we do try to like barrel age it or set some aside for blending purposes. But even with that, like we have zero inventory, we had to sell it because we have nothing. So we just had to give up on that until we had a little bit more capacity. We are in the process of remodeling our original brewery to add some additional fermentation space. But even if that was active today, we'd still be short. So it's a little bit of a challenge.
So what would we see? We can kind of get an idea of your brewery here in the green screen behind me. So we might see 12.5 beers if we were to come in there and join you. What percentage of them would be stouts?
Well, now again, this is all pre-COVID. Our tasting room has been a bit sparse because we, been a little bit limited. But typically, we tell people we have 16 beers on draft, and we'll have 6 to 12 things in bottles or cans. We would almost always have 3 to 6 of those being, big boozy stouts of various styles. Maybe a quad or 2, a barley wine or a wheat wine, something in that category. On the flip side, we'll have, 5 or 6 hoppy beers, 5 or 6 fruited sours, and then like 1 easy drinking beer that's like 4%.
I've got to ask you on the barley wines. Do
Yes.
you make them more American style or European style?
We do both. I mean, obviously the Americans, as a matter of fact, we started most of our original barley wines, were very hoppy. They were basically just very malty, IPAs that were cool day one, but it took them 12, 18 months of aging to get to the point where they were, really how they should be. So at this stage, we brew primarily more, British style. So a lot of that treacle and, dried fruit, figs. Matter of fact, we actually age a lot of our barley wines on things like figs and dates, just to fully encompass that jamminess.
I got to try that. I love barley wines, and I particularly like more of the English style rather than the American styles. So, but I don't know that I've had one that's been actually fermented on dates.
Well, we'll do that actually post fermentation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, we've known, like our first 3 years being in business, we were known primarily as making big, boozy, over the top beers, barley wines and quads and things like that, and stouts. And we're very good at that. That's in our wheelhouse. And we did that for 3 years. Matter of fact, we never made a beer below 7%. They were all 8, 10, 12, 14, which made your trip to the tasting room a bit of a challenge, at least in the getting home part of it. But 3 years ago, we decided to expand our portfolio and introduce IPAs, introduce some sours, things like that, bring the average ABV at least down into a slightly more manageable perspective. But we still do love those big boozy beers. I mean, we brewed our big stout we make. It's called Demons Surround Me. It's 18%, and it's no joke.
Well, and that's what we're about to try here, or I'm about to try now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. You have to clarify. Is it Evangelon 12 Linnell New England Triple IPA?
So yes, this is Evangeline. It's the 12th in an 18-part series that we're doing. It's based on some Japanese manga called Neon Genesis, and we named each of the 18 iterations after angels, which are a recurring theme in this anime series. So, the nerds, they love it.
You have no trouble creating recipes.
No. Or artwork.
That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. So this is 12th in the series. In what period of time?
We started it, I want to say early 2019, maybe. So, maybe even actually probably closer to late 2018. It's about every 2 months we've been cranking out a new one. We release a new IPA pretty much about every 10 days. It's a brand new IPA, new package, new artwork, new recipe, which granted has some similarities to prior iterations, but at the end of the day, they're all standalone beers.
Well, I'm impressed with your creativity. I'm going to work on pouring mine, and why don't you kind of unpack this guy while I work on a pour?
Sure. Well, with me, I always love talking about the package first and foremost, because for me, we design these to be like an old school album cover. You know what I mean? Like when you were browsing at the record store, you'd see this album artwork, and if it looked cool, you'd pick it up and you'd look at it and you'd say, wow, that's awesome. Go home and listen to this right away. And while you're listening to the album, you would look at the artwork. And that's, what we're into. So obviously we're into dark things. Some people say we're a metal brewery, and yes, we love metal, and yes, we are to a degree, but I like to call it more dark art. It's art first and foremost, and I think this is just a textbook example of what we do. But as far as the beer itself goes, it is a triple IPA, which surprisingly for us means we're always last on these types of podcasts. It's clocking in at 10%. It is in the hazy style category.
And you said I couldn't get ahead on it.
Yeah, well, you can get ahead if you do a nice vigorous pour. But I tend to make these things the way I want to drink the IPAs versus what style says or what the customers want. I want it to be consumed the way I like to drink my IPAs. And when I'm drinking New England style, there's like a couple things I love, and one is I do like them to be drier. I find that a lot of the popular Cool Kid IPAs tend to be a little sweet for my taste, in that 6.5, 7 Plato range. This is clocking in at, 4.5 Plato. So it makes it, I think, a little bit more drinkable of an experience. It's still juicy. It's still got all that nice hop aroma that you would expect, but it makes it just, I think, a little bit more of a down the hatch type experience. Second thing is it's got to be warmer. Mine right now is about 58, 59 degrees, which is what I like. I recommend not drinking it straight out of the fridge at like 35. I think it just does the beer a disservice. So let it come up almost close to room temperature, almost close to stout temp. The other thing I love is I like low carb. So, minimal head, and even with a swirl, you get a little bit of fizz, but really I like a low carb beer. I think it helps with the aromatics and again, the drinkability of the experience. But this beer, like all of ours, we always focus on the malt body first, because I find that if you don't have a well-balanced, delicious, drinkable beer, it doesn't matter how great it smells. We can jam-pack tons of fruity, popular hops in here, and it smells great, but then when you drink it, it's like, either it tastes like nothing, or it becomes a chore to drink after, you're halfway through the beer.
12% ABV, is that what I remember?
This one's only 10. So, a little bit more sessionable on the sessionable side of things for us.
But it is really smooth for a 10%. Super smooth.
We make dangerous beers. They will.
I'm about to say that one's serious dangers.
They will creep up on you, so be careful.
There's almost no heat to it. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, we try to make
it
very balanced.
Piney, a little bit of dankness, some nice cracker. What else do you get off of it?
Yeah, 100%. I think balance with us, even though sometimes it's a little extreme, I think is the key. And hiding alcohol is something we're very good at. So on the aroma side of things, it's Citra, it's Mosaic on what little hop side additions we do, and then heavy on Citra, which gives a little bit of obviously that classic citrus, but also a little bit of mustiness, which I quite enjoy. The other hop that's in here is Enigma, which is one of my personal favorites. It's a hop that basically confuses most people. It's citrus on one side and dank on the other. It's floral, but spicy. It's grassy, yet peppery. I mean, it's a bit of a mind twist. We balance it out with some Simcoe for a little bit of that classic, pininess. But I love it. It's candied orange, but with just a little bit of green melon, a little bit of that mustiness, and of course, kind of that classic, orange juice in a glass juiciness. But, just get in my mouth delicious. You know what I mean?
I love the color. Very nice color. And of course, I like anything in a Tiku glass. That is really classy.
Thank you. We buy a lot of glassware. We've probably done 40, 50 different glasses of different shapes and sizes. And I think it's absolutely important. Teku is definitely one of my favorite. This is also one of my favorite. This is a Rostel glass. And it has one of our Brewed to Destroy logos. But yeah, I think the color and the haziness of this one, I think, works out nice, because I think, a lot of people make hazies and some of them are a bit turbid. I like this. It is clearly opaque, but it still has a nice bright golden tonality to it. And I think it forebodes what's to come.
So what is the Dawn of the Dark Day 6?
So our anniversary party, which is in January every year, is called Dawn of a Dark Day. And this past January was our 6th anniversary, and this was a special glass that we made for that event. Matter of fact, I'm hoping that, although I'm slightly pessimistic, that things will get back to quote unquote normal here sooner than later, because our plan was to move our annual party from January, which is not the best time of the year to throw an outdoor party, into a more seasonal party and celebrate like a half-year party. So this year it's like September 11th, and it will be our 6.66 year anniversary. So we're very excited.
On 9/11?
9/10, something like that. But that weekend, whatever that second weekend after Labor Day is, and we were going to throw a 6.66 year anniversary party for ourselves. So hopefully things will be back to normal. We'll see.
Well, this is delicious, but we've got some questions here.
Cool.
So what would you say is your favorite aspect of this beer?
Well,
you mentioned so many things.
It's a nice beer. I mean, we make a ton of beers like this. I think this is a particularly good batch. It's funny, when we do brew beers with Enigma, they don't tend to score as well as when we do more like Galaxy, Nelson, more of that just, cool kid hop. But I love it. I think it's a little bit more complex than some of the ones that we do. I think the malt body is a nice balance. We tend to make a lot of very golden, very light colored hazies, which I know a lot of people make, more of that orange and golden tonality. But we use some Simpson's Naked Golden Notes in this, which has a very high love bond. And we went from that, 3 to 4 SRM, which is where a lot of ours is. This is probably more like, 5.5, 6. It's a little bit more golden, but still not as golden brown. So I think those two elements worked out real nice. That, and I think the artwork is pretty sick.
Yeah, I'll switch to that artwork so everybody can see it. It's quite unique. Is that done in-house?
I drive all the projects, but I work with about a dozen designers all over the globe, and they bring my visions to reality.
It is quite unique. Kolby or Brian, you guys have a favorite aspect of a triple IPA?
We personally have never brewed a IPA above, 8 and change percent ABV. When we typically do higher ABV ones, we focus on a malt backbone, a lot of pale ale malt, trying to give a little bit of texture without getting into maybe some of those old school crystal malts. I think at that, it's a lot of balance. The higher ABV you go, it's finding a means of having a sweetness that's not like fake decoction malts, balance some of the inherent bitterness so you keep a very drinkable beer.
Yeah, no, we've done some 10%ers on the IPAs. Sorry about the backlighting. The lights have shut off in our building, so I got to go.
I like it. It's very dramatic.
It makes the bags in my eyes look a little bit more dramatic. But anyway, no, we've done some of those too, like high 10%, 11% alcohol. IPAs especially. I think we did one with Azaka hops, and I think that was the most expressive hop within that high ABV beer that we did in there. It's just like popped with apricot. It was a wild, just straight single hop, single mash, kind of like a smash beer that we did. And I think that really did. It was called Beau Arts. It was it was a collaboration with Blue Jacket in DC that we did with them, and it was a fun project. But it was like just over the top, high ABV, trying to get as many hops in there we can, but try to get that alcohol in the 10%, 11% alcohol. It worked well. It was very smooth, as Mark can say that when you get those smooth IPAs that are in the 10% range, it's kind of dangerous. Lamenting to his, we never brewed anything below 6% alcohol since we started, and we kept on ratcheting it up as the demand, back in 2011, everything was going above that range, and then all of a sudden, session beers became a thing. So now we're going on lagers and things that are in the 5%, 5.3, 5.5, 6% alcohol range that are more conducive to a lot of sales for sure. But just I think just more introduction to craft beer. It's hard to present somebody with a higher alcohol beer and be like, hey, here you go, try this, and then that type of attitude, I think, has been a little bit decreased, but still a market for sure.
So Kolby, my favorite aspect of this beer is it has an unusual heat to it. It reminds me, I've had some beers here in the deep South. I'm from South Carolina. A lot of times people will put a little Carolina Reaper in there, and as long as they don't put too much, it's actually quite pleasant.
Sure.
Yours has a little bit of that flavor, but it disappears. So, Mark, there's a little heat there, kind of like a Carolina Reaper pepper, but it's just while it's kind of sitting on your tongue, and as soon as you swallow it, goes away. It's quite pleasant.
Poof.
Yeah.
There's no Carolina Reaper peppers, which I love in this beer, but we have done quite a few pepper beers over the years, so if you're into that kind of thing, next time we make one, I'd be happy to send you one. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with this malt body, but I think the overall theme is that it's very, very drinkable, almost scary drinkable.
Yes. But is that what creates that heat? Is it the interaction of the alcohol and the hop bitterness? Do you know?
I mean, perhaps. I mean, it's a very low bitterness beer.
It is. That's what's surprising.
We do 0 hot side additions on any of our IPAs other than Whirlpool. Like we do, and even that's a very modest addition. Everything's in dry hop. And obviously, the hops we used are high alpha acid, and yes, you could pick up, I suppose, a little bit of additional contribution, but my guess is this beer, we haven't sent this out for testing because it was a one and done, but it's probably 36, 37 IBUs, something like that.
Great.
But
Mark, are you doing any sort of Whirlpool like reduction in temperature when you're doing your Whirlpool hops?
Yes, I mean, yes, but there's equipment limitations.
Right.
We do not have a Brocon.
Wow, no, we actually can't do it on ours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can do it in our Richmond facility. We can't do it on the Brocon because it's too difficult. But
yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. That would be absolutely. Then there's 0 hot side additions, right? It would be awesome.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's some inherent alcoholic booziness because it is high ABV,
Yeah.
and I do think there's some quirky hops that might give a little bit of peppery note.
Yeah, that's it.
More black pepper
Black
to me. Black pepper is more of what I get, but of course, also could be yeast related. This is one of the blend type hops or blend type yeasts, and I think this is like Gen 9. So I don't know.
Nice.
So maybe a little phenolic in there, you think?
Maybe.
Could be.
Maybe.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, I think it's fascinating, and I guess that's why you don't brew the same recipe twice.
Yeah, well, makes it always fun and interesting. We're not that worried about repeatability per se. That's not one of the criteria that's really high on the list. We do have some that we do make from time to time. It's evolved, but that's definitely not the majority.
Well, I'd love to get everybody's answer on this next one. So your Desert Island hop and your Desert Island beer style. And Mark, we'll start with you since we're talking about your brewery. And as soon as we're done with this, we'll come back for highlights of what's coming next from Adroit.
So I obviously would bring a crap ton of Cascade with me, and then I would trade it with people in Australia for Galaxy.
It's a bad trade. Mark.
Well, apparently they love it, so
Well,
we'll see.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, maybe not now. That was some years ago. But.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I love Mosaic. I think that is probably my my favorite hop. We use it quite a bit in a variety of styles. We have a black IPA that's releasing next week that we brewed with Mosaic and Sriracha Ace of all things. So I could be happy living on an island drinking that all day.
Kolby or Brian, how about you guys? What's a Desert Island hop and beer?
I'm going to go with Saws and Goldings, and the beers associated that with Pilsner Kel and Duvel. Give me those like flex your technique, highly technical classic styles, with really rounded, well-developed hop flavors that are not, just straight aromatics. And yeah, I'm in.
Brian, how about you? And it's got to be quick because I want to give Mark just a minute to wrap up. We have a hard stop in 4 minutes.
Absolutely. Bramling Cross is one of my favorite hops of all time. I mean, it's an ESB hop, but it also works well in New England style IPAs, which I found. So it's awesome. From a beer standpoint, if I had to pick a favorite, things that inspire me, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. That's a beer that I would definitely take with me at all times for sure.
Mark, as we wrap up, tell me what's happening next at Adroit.
Well, I appreciate that. More of the same. Obviously, we continue with what we do, which is new. We have some new projects in the pipeline. We've done some beers with a drum and bass DJ named Diesel Boy in the past, and these beers have been very, even for our standards, just over the top beers. But we're working on a 3-part series of 3 different style of beers that will be sold as one package unit to be consumed at the same time, which would hopefully come out later this fall. We do a lot of collaborations with metal bands and stuff like that. So I think the next one is Pig Destroyer, which we're very excited about. Something hopefully that'll come out for our Dawn of a Dark Day festival.
And what style of beer is it?
TBD.
Good answer.
I mean, I don't know. You know how these things are. You know how this type of collabs are.
Indeed.
Somehow I don't think you'll have any problems in developing a recipe.
Maybe a Bud Light clone. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, I hope you'll share it with us when you get that out. So with that, we've got about 2 minutes before a hard stop, and I would like that to be unceremonious, and instead let's kind of wrap this up in a nice, organized manner. Mark, Brian, Kolby, and Kenny, who is we've had to jump off screen, but I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun. I know I learned a lot. I know I drank a lot of delicious beers, and cheers to all three of you. You guys know how to brew some wonderful beer. Brian, I hope they'll let you out. It looks like the lights are out. I hope the
They
doors
may
are not
close it down on me. Yeah, we'll see. I got a key, though. It's all right. I know where all the switches are.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody taking so much time to not only prepare, but actually present this. This was a lot of fun. So with that, in the audience, I appreciate, we had a huge crowd tonight. It was a lot of fun. And this will be a lot of fun going forward. We'll do another one of these next month with 4 more brewers and 4 more delicious beers. So until then, this is the Beer Connoisseur Beer Buyers Club podcast and live stream, and we will see you. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.